The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jane are that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
And welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. We thank everybody, of course, for tuning in and watching the show across the Jacob YouTube network, or if you're downloading or listening via Apple or Spotify, continue to do so, JDoc. Our program from a week ago had a lot of activity, a lot of download activity on our podcast version, which is just the audio version of the program. So good stuff, and we continue to encourage our viewers and our listeners to get educated. That's why the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey is here today.
Absolutely, Joe. And last week with Robert Price, always a popular show. Robert, one of the premier energy experts, on the globe, around the globe, and so it was great to have him on, and certainly lots to talk about. This week we have on the program a couple members of our Labor and Energy Alliance Board of Directors, no strangers to the broadcast regulars, John Bain from EQT, and of course, Sean Steppe of the Boilermakers Union. And, lots to talk about, lot of different topics. This is a conversation, going to be a statewide conversation for the most part. I'm going to talk about the governor's PA cap and trade initiative proposal. So there's so much to talk about that. You and I have talked about Reggie. Sean Steppe's talked about Reggie. Rob Barrett, who's the PA AFL-CIO president, has talked a lot about having our own energy policy here in the state of Pennsylvania, because we have so many resources. Very interesting. So the governor's PA cap and trade proposal would be along those lines. And so there's varying opinions in labor and energy. But the key is, we're going to have the discussion, and at the same time, we don't have all the details. We have the governor's press release. And so, we have a lot to talk about, Joe, and to educate our listeners, and of course, to talk about our great labor and energy leadership. And when you talk about that, John Bain and Sean Steppe are at the top of the heap here in PA, and we're ecstatic to have them on the broadcast.
Yes, sir. The Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey, and with no disrespect to John Bain, John, and don't take any disrespect from this, Sean Steppe's one of my favorite personalities when he comes onto the program. He's loud, he's energetic, he's opinionated, and he backs everything up. And that doesn't mean you don't, but boy, I do enjoy sitting back, watching and listening to Sean, and it should be a great dialogue today, JDoc.
On the other hand, John's a handsome man with great influence, and so we got two.
We got two guys with hair. Two guys with hair and two bald guys. So it should be a pretty good program. This is the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. We'll get to the conversation with JDoc right after the break.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. As I'm getting older, I'd like somebody to fight for me. So I called up Retiree First.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you. I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at Retiree First. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show on the Jacob Media Network. I'm ecstatic to bring into the program Sean Steffi, business agent, Boilermakers, Local 154. Sean, how are you, sir?
Very good today. Thanks for having me on again, JDoc.
It's always a pleasure. And John Bain, Director of Government Affairs, EQT Corporation. How are you, John?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
How'd you like those compliments there as we were going to break? Did you?
I'll just say that Sean is from the soft coal area of the state. I'm from the anthracite region, so we'll just leave it at that.
That'll be a totally different topic on another show, but
it's another show, JDoc. That's another show.
Exactly. So, guys, it's great to have you on the podcast. I want to start off by asking you just for our listeners who may have not seen you. You guys are regulars on the show. A little bit about Sean, if you would, about who you represent, about the Boilermakers Union, and what you do as a leader with the Boilermakers Union.
Sure, JDoc. So I'm a business agent for the Boilermakers out of Pittsburgh. I'm also the head of our LEAP, our legislative committee. We represent 24 counties in Pennsylvania, 2 in Ohio, and 2 in West Virginia. We are fossil fuel driven. We, build and maintain steel mills, gas plants, nuclear plants, coal plants, anything to do with heavy industrial. We usually got a part of that, cracker plants, chemical, all that. So we're really driven on the fossil fuel end of it. And it's important to have partners like John Bain and EQT.
And so, and with all that, okay, and you talk about, the fossil fuel driven industry is such a big part of what you do. We've had a conversation in the past about, your members, you in particular, but, your members being huge advocates for the environment, okay, taking part in outside activities, fishing, hunting. I want to paint the whole picture here. Talk about that.
So, a lot of my members, including myself, we're avid outdoorsmen. We love the environment, fishing, hunting, hiking, boating, the whole 9 yards. But we also know that we have to have reliable electricity and reliable energy sources through gas and coal. And we feel that we can do it environmentally friendly. And I know guys like John Bain and EQT want to do the same thing on drilling and fracking. And it's a thing that we're going to need, and we have the technology to move it forward. And I'm not a Debbie Downer on the renewables, but the data shows that we need more than wind and solar to power this great nation and the state of Pennsylvania. And we've been blessed with the natural resources in Pennsylvania, gas, coal, and we got it, and we got to use it the right way. And the Boilermakers want to be a part of it, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's carbon capture, and nuclear modular nukes. We're ready to build it, but I got no equity in solar nor wind. My equity is in building out fossil fuel energy infrastructure.
And so, having said that, let me bring in John Bain. John, if you would tell our listeners, remind them a little bit about EQT Corporation and what you do as a leader there.
Yep, sure. I am Director of Government Affairs at EQT Corporation. We're currently the leading producer of natural gas in the country. We produce around 6 BCF a day. To put it in perspective, if EQT were a country in and of itself, would be number 12 in the world as far as natural gas production. And we operate right here in Pennsylvania, right in Ohio and in West Virginia. And a little background on the government affairs side of things. We're kind of a watchdog here in Harrisburg and Charleston and West Virginia and Columbus and Ohio, just advocating for the industry, working with individuals like Sean to shape policy and legislation in their state capitals.
And so, having said that, as we're trying to, show the whole picture before we get into the issues, John, what don't people know, and what aren't they hearing about natural gas? Okay, and the lowering of emissions nationally and globally, and a big part of that's natural gas. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think what people don't realize is that natural gas has been responsible over the last 25 years or so for lowering 65% of the emissions in the United States. So that opportunity, we have taken advantage of that and used our resources here to to lower the emissions, and we're outpacing the rest of the world when it comes to that. What people also don't realize is since the inception of the industry and the Marcellus Shale and the shale boom, not only in Pennsylvania but in other areas of the country, the technology has gotten better. We've learned a lot of lessons. Everything we do just continues to evolve. We're drilling longer laterals, which is less earth disturbance. We're recycling. I think at EQT, we're over 90% of our water is recycled. And we're making changes that, we've identified different areas of our operations where we can do better. For example, we spent millions of dollars replacing our pneumatic devices, which I won't get into the technical details of that, but we identified that as one of the biggest issues when it comes to emissions and our operations, and that significantly reduced our emissions. So it goes back to, and I think we can do a better job of touting the environmental benefits of our industry, but I think people don't realize that, the emissions reductions related to our industry outpace any other form of energy on the planet.
Well, and that's, we talk about the Marcellus Shale. Certainly, that's one of the things. We talk about the improvements that have been made, okay, over the years and over the decades to lower emissions. EQT is also a leader in that space, correct? I mean, you have goals in regards to emissions, as do a lot of the members of the Marcellus Shale. Talk about that.
Yeah, so our goal is to be net zero on or before 2025, and we are making progress. And I can tell you this: every time I put on my computer, there's a countdown clock that shows that number getting closer and closer. And we're doing a lot of exciting things at EQT. We're part of the Appalachian Region Clean Hydrogen Hub, ARCH2, which is one of the things that the federal government awarded billions of dollars to develop a hydrogen hub. And again, that's just another clean use of natural gas that will help all of us lower emissions, and also help people like Sean and his workers, because there's going to be a lot of jobs related to that. There's a lot of money and capital being spent, and I think that's just another example. And one more I'll give you is carbon capture. Is something that we're all looking at pretty hard right now. There's legislation which is in the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania that would allow for carbon capture, and I know we're all working pretty hard on that and hoping we can get something passed in the near future.
And so, Sean, obviously these projects are really important to you, and one of the things that is important, we talk about job safety and the skilled labor, okay, and the commitment to doing these jobs efficiently as the technology grows. As you talk about carbon capture, which is on the front lines today when you talk about labor and energy. Talk about job safety, Sean, and the quality labor that we have, the trained professional careers that are every day working in the field to take this technology that is being created to lower emissions, and produce. Talk about your skilled labor force that is on the front lines making this happen, and talk about job safety in the process.
Sure. So, I mean, the Boilermakers have been advocating carbon capture for over 20 years, okay? So there's other things like the hydrogen, like John spoke with the hydrogen hubs. So, every day we're training. It's basically the same training that we've been doing for, years. We've been over 100 years in the business, but we're ready to go right now and build this new technology. But this new technology is not there yet, okay? It's a couple years down the road. Maybe we get started. And so every day we're training. Our guys are masters at rigging. They're masters at welding and everything. They're safety trained to be on a job. We can build anything. All we need is somebody to hand us a blueprint, and we're ready to start building. That goes with the rest of organized labor, all from the steam fitters to the insulators to sheet metal. These guys are all ready to build whatever's thrown our way. We're ready to build it. And my point right now is with the appetite for electricity and the use of our energy, we got to keep building out infrastructure right now and maintaining it. We can't be retiring it. And that's where we're coming into play right now. Like, let's go. Let's keep moving on and what still we can get to what John's saying about like the future and maybe, being decarbonized. Me personally, I don't believe that's ever going to happen. Okay, 100%. And it's not even going to happen with renewables. But I'm willing to build out whatever they want to build, but I also need to maintain the current infrastructure that we have right now and keep my guys working.
And so having said that, guys, and we're going to get into all that, I want to talk about jobs, okay? Because, we talk about the environment, we talk about the training, the quality, and the technology coming in. But when we talk about our labor force, okay, our union labor force, they're family sustaining, life sustaining, career sustaining jobs. I always say this, and that being in a union is the difference between a job and a career, right? Talk about that, Sean, and then we're going to get into obviously, the careers and jobs that EQT offers every day to the workforce. But Sean, if you would talk about the career sustaining jobs and benefits that our union workforce, obviously including the Boilermakers, offers and provides to your members.
So that's one of the great things about being in organized labor or even a Boilermaker, that the men and women that are in my local, they just don't have to stay right here. They're not buckled down to just Western PA. So if the work is breaking somewhere else, say like the new Lordstown plant in Ohio, that's 45 minutes away. These guys are getting in their vehicle and they're going because they're making a great family sustaining wage, $48 an hour on a new job, maybe even $50. They're getting per diems. They're getting a pension. They're getting an annuity. They're getting it paid in. They're working. They're not going to stick around here and build a $15 an hour renewable job. And that's what's so frustrating. For us in the Boilermakers and even organized labor, it goes to that we need this skill to build out energy infrastructure with natural gas, nuclear, coal, whatever it is. There has to be a high skill level, a high safety level, like welding certs, the whole 9 yards. That skill level, whether anybody likes it or not, I'm speaking the truth, is not there to build a solar farm, okay? That's why we've added on the other show, $15 an hour, all you need is a valid driver's license, okay? That's the only experience, all right? And so anybody, I'm not saying that anybody can do, but basically to pick a solar panel up and plug it in is like plugging an extension cord in. At the end, to do the line transmission tie-in and the energy infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure, yeah, that needs skill. But to do the brunt of it, there's really not a skill there. So we got to keep our training and our skill base up because these guys ain't spot welding fenders on tricycles. They're welding high-pressure steam lines. They're welding valves. They're welding pipelines. This is where the skill set comes in.
And I bring that up specifically for that reason because, we've talked about it many times, the transition. I mean, you've gone to some of these job fairs in general. Now, how relevant that is to our conversation, that we're going to get into, we'll discuss it. But the fact of the matter is that people need to know that this isn't just a job for job transition. John, talk about the careers and the jobs that EQT provides to your workforce and your members and your contractors on a daily basis. Thousands and thousands of individuals, family sustaining jobs. Talk about that.
Yep. So EQT, we have roughly, I believe, we're up to around 1,000 employees right now, just at EQT between our 3 operating states. But our contractor base is 25,000 plus strong, and everything from people moving water to the folks out on the rigs. It's a lot of economic opportunity, and I think if you would go to Greene County or Washington County, Pennsylvania, and talk to local individuals there, they can talk to you about what has changed over the past 15 years or so since the shale revolution really started. One issue, though, when it comes to people like Sean and his union brothers and sisters, the bread and butter of the organized labor jobs come down to building things, right? And if we're not building things, there aren't jobs. Specifically, and we talk about carbon capture, and that's going to be a good thing for Pennsylvania, a good thing for the environment. But we have environmentalists out there who are opposing it because you're going to have to build things in order to have carbon capture. You're going to have to build pipelines.
Yep. And this is a great point. We're diving into it right now. In other words, okay, we're not keeping the projects here in PA. They're going somewhere else, and all that is connected. So when to recap so far, obviously we care about the environment. There's a commitment from labor and energy. Okay, we have the skill. We understand renewables are coming into the market, obviously, and we're committed to building things and doing what has to be done. Now let's jump in right now. Okay, got 4 minutes to the break, but we're gonna start the conversation right now, and of course, we'll take a break and then we'll continue it. But guys, Reggie was and is it's a coalition of states that are opting into to the same energy policy, emissions policy, and we've talked about it many times. One of the things that we have done, so we have all these resources in Pennsylvania. Why would we jump into somebody else's policy? Rob Bear's talked about it many times. Let's have our own policy, okay? Because why would we, some states that are very, their resources are incredibly small when it comes to ours, why would we opt into somebody else's situation? Okay, and now we're talking, and we're going to talk about the governor's, cap and trade proposal. Okay, number one, okay, for our listeners, what is, I probably go out my door, talk to my neighbors, and if one of them knew what the hell a cap and trade, the cap and trade proposal was, I'd run naked down Broad Street. Okay, so. And we certainly don't want that. So what is it? What, John, I see you got a big smile. It's a horrible thought. I get it. But John, what is the cap and trade proposal?
Well, first of all, don't run down Broad Street. The Phillies are on a roll. I think I can throw them out.
That'll kill the streak immediately.
So the cap and trade is basically, the governor came out with something that is similar to Reggie, but exclusive to Pennsylvania, called the PA Climate Emissions Reduction Act, or the PACER Act, which right now the devils are in the details. We're not really sure what it's going to look like, but it models Reggie, where you basically, and Reggie right now is across 11 states, but you put a cap on the emissions of power plants, and then you have to pay a certain amount of dollars to offset those emissions. And again, the devil's in the details, but it's basically my understanding that it's going to be similar to Reggie, but instead of 11 states, it's just going to be in Pennsylvania.
And so which is obviously a step in the right direction because it doesn't tie us to 11 other states' policies. And there are some labor support for it, or at least some good comments. But we're obviously we're early in the game, and the governor's talked about his commitment to putting people together from both sides, which he has, to kind of work together on something. Sean, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We have a minute left for the break. Okay, let's take a quick break. I'm going to come to you, Sean Steffi, after the break, and then we'll continue this discussion because obviously you represent the Boilermakers. You have some great insights, and we can't wait to hear them. Let's take a break. We're going to have more from the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey and our guests John Bain and Sean Steffi in just a minute.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jane are that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third-generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Our guests are Sean Steffi, Boilermakers Local 154, John Bain of EQT Corporation. Both John and Sean are regulars on the broadcast, members of our Labor Energy Alliance. We're talking about the governor's PA cap and trade proposal. Right now we have a press release, okay? But there's so many different points to discuss, and we're talking to Sean Steffi. Sean, if you would, based on what you know about right now and what's going on, what are your thoughts on this proposal?
So, I could go on and on, but here's what it comes down to. Right now, the governor, he wants to incorporate this Pacer Press in his cap and trade program, and he thinks it's a winner. And I've spoken for 5 years till I'm blue in the face. I'm skeptical. I've been skeptical of Reggie. I don't think, and I'm going to present you why I don't think today, JDoc, okay? First off, the Lordstown job. This is in Ohio. This is the second power plant that they're going to build right on top of the other one, okay? So here's the Korean owner. This is his quote. In Korea, the electricity growth is almost sustained, said James Kang, CEO and president of the new plant. We studied the American power market very carefully, he said. Kang said, despite its rural location, Lordstown is a great spot for this power plant because of its cheap natural gas and proximity to major roadways, train lines, and growing industrial sectors. Okay? This is to help their manufacturing sector to energize it with electricity. Cheap, reliable electricity, okay? They're building that right now. My God, got guys going. They're already building that plant. I'm not building anything in Pennsylvania. We just dropped Renova. We dropped Burgestown. We dropped the one in Elizabeth Township. So we got a ripple effect. Not only is our permitting, our regulations, and an unfriendly business environment, but we also have a cap and trade environment looming over the heads of people that are not going to build it if they're going to pay an extra expenditure to build it. That leads into the next thing. They're going to build another one in Harrison County, and it's going to start in 2026. That's another natural gas plant. I told you this the last time about Lordstown down there, or Dodgeville in West Virginia, okay? West Virginia just announced that they're going to build. It was the whole way back in January that they said they were going to build a plant. They made an agreement with the labor, okay, with labor, okay? So it came out here just the other day, new natural gas plant, Dodgeville, 2,000 megawatt, okay? The company said it would employ 3 advanced gas turbines, okay? This is went through the public speaking period. Nobody has a problem with that. $3.3 billion. They made a deal with labor already. Labor is going to build that out, okay? 1,000 jobs. 1,000 jobs. Lordstown, almost 1,000 jobs. Harrison, this is where the work's going. They're building it. They're building it out. And here's what frustrates me so much on the left end, the left side of politics, okay? They want artificial intelligence. They want data centers. These are great big electricity. They take massive amounts of electricity, okay? So what are we doing? First Energy comes out and says, hey, can't make the CO2 reductions that I said in 2030. I'm not going to keep my coal fires open until 2040. And now I'm going to run hundreds of millions of dollars in transmission lines into Virginia to power their data centers. Okay, because that's what they got to do. I don't know what we're thinking, and maybe, hey, I'm a blue-collar guy. Maybe I got it wrong, but somebody proved me wrong on this data. Okay, West Virginia is poised to build it out. You only got to look at Senate Bill 188 and see what they want to do in natural gas. John Bain can comment on them. He knows that they're ready to build it out down there and build everything from hydrogen, gas, new gas plants. They want to build it. They got the Public Service Commission of West Virginia made the announcement. They're ready to rock and roll. So for me as a Boilermaker, if my guy's going to drive an hour to go across the border to go to work, that's where they're going. If they're going to drive an hour and a half, that's where they're going, because they're making damn good money and they're getting paid in their pension and annuity. And I'm fortunate to have equity in those 2 states right now, because I had more guys work in 2 counties in Ohio, Jefferson and Columbia, than I had in 24 counties in Pennsylvania this spring. And I'm not lying to you. That's the fact. And John knows what's going on in them other 2 states. They're ready to build things out because they're crushing it on manufacturing and they're crushing it on production. And they want to have this down there. They want to build natural gas.
So for the listener, Sean, so you're saying that when at least at first glance, and with obviously your knowledge that obviously this is an alternative to Reggie, but you're talking about the potential of this type of regulation deterring business obviously in the state of Pennsylvania. Is that
what's the common denominator on this whole thing, JDoc? Is West Virginia and Ohio planning a cap and trade program? Are they wanting to join Reggie? It's a 11 state, trifecta or whatever. They got no ambition to join any cap and trade program. That would stifle growth with the energy unless everybody in the PJM participated in a cap and trade. You're not going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars and pay into a carbon when they can build it right across. And that new plant in West Virginia, that's so they can, it tells you right in that newsletter that it's so they can tie into the PJM grid and sell the power. They're setting themselves up. Let me see if I can just read it. West Virginia is pleased to welcome yet another business to our state. This is to go into the PJM, this power that they're making. That's the bottom line, and they're going to sell it, okay? They're poised. And I'm curious to see what John has to say, because I've met with John in West Virginia, and he knows what they want to do down there as well as I do.
John, let's hear it.
Yeah. I mean, the First of all, the legislation that Sean referenced passed in 2023, and essentially it identifies sites that are shovel ready for natural gas projects. And once those sites are identified, it makes it much easier for investors to come in and say, okay, well, the state just gave me a list of 20 sites. Now they're going to help me get my permits quickly, and we can put a shovel in the ground and start building. And I think you're going to see more and more natural gas-fired power plants being built in West Virginia. Like Sean said, there's a lot of uncertainty in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio. It's a different story. And I spend probably around 60 days a year down in West Virginia in their state capital. And Sean came down for a few days, and I'm sure he agrees with me. It's a totally different atmosphere, totally different ball game. They really, they're begging us to build infrastructure out in West Virginia, and they're building pipelines, and there's not the opposition that we have in Pennsylvania. And they're right next door, which just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and not only just the natural gas infrastructure, you correct me if I'm wrong, John, we're talking new bridges, we're talking hydro, we're talking new roads, everything to encompass, like, to get manufacturing and push the energy growth. And like you said, the pipelines, they're ready to go, and they're willing to get ready to go into the carbon capture and storage down there. They're in like all the above. We're beating each other up here in Pennsylvania, and for God's sakes, like, we're standing on the mother load, and we're not doing anything. We haven't built a new natural gas plant in how long? I can't even tell you. We finished the last one, 5 years ago? And here we are. There's 3 or 4 of them that I just told you about, and it is no lie. It's happening. Them are good construction jobs with labor.
So, John, you would mention, obviously, that the proposal at this point is just a press release. Okay. And, this governor has, has made a commitment, at least verbally, but has made a commitment, I think, in some of his actions, to be more open-minded when it comes to traditional energy projects, and putting, the commitment to kind of put groups together to see if we can come up with, kind of lock us in a room and say, don't come out until you've got a plan. Is this cap and since we don't have the details yet from the cap and trade agreement, is it from first glance, okay, and discussion, does this seem like it's going to be just maybe not part of a coalition like Reggie, but almost identical to it? Because it sounds a lot like it.
Yeah, I mean, from my takeaway is that it is very similar, but again, PA specific. You mentioned putting everybody in a room, and I know Sean can probably chime in on this as well, but that's something, at least around this proposal, that now I'm just speaking for EQT, that we had not been involved in those conversations. I'm hopeful that will happen, and there is a dialogue where we can all sit down. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we do work well with several of the environmental groups, but then there's others that are they just want us to simply go away.
Right. Sean, if you would.
Yeah, so, I mean, my thing with this is, listen, I work with the environmental groups. At the end of the day, I want the same thing they want, but they want it in a different strategy. And for me, in my own opinion, the strategy and the numbers ain't lining up for what they want. And we got to have fossil fuel energy, and it's got to be natural gas. It's going to be clean. And a lot of guys ask me, what are you worried about fracking for? And like John spoke, well, if they're not fracking or drilling or moving the product, then I'm not building any infrastructure. And things are going to, the adults got to get in a room and really come to and sit down and say, hey, this is going to work. It's not going to work. And I guess what I'm getting on the cap and trade thing, JDoc, maybe this will make it understand easier. So if you could go and buy, if you had to buy a new vehicle and you drove across the line and you bought a brand new truck and you paid, $50,000 for it, but you want to buy in PA and they want to hit you with a $10,000 tax on top of that $50,000, you're going to go to West Virginia and buy that new vehicle and save yourself $10,000, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's the same thing. They're still going to be able to put that power on the market. They're not going to have to pay that carbon tax every year. To me, it's a no-brainer. I just don't know why we're even arguing about it right now.
Well, you look. I'm looking at the press release, and it says kicking off a new era of energy leadership to create nearly 15,000 energy jobs and lower electricity costs as the goal of the proposal. That's why I brought up at the beginning. Do we have any inside? When it comes to those 15,000 energy jobs, one of the things that when we talked about at the very beginning of this broadcast that's why I talked about the union jobs. Any speculation there, Sean, on those jobs?
Yeah, I got some speculation. This is purely my opinion. So it's 14,500 jobs. My question is, what are those jobs? What are the trades in those jobs? Okay. So I want you to think about it. Clearfield's going to build these great big 1,000, 2,000 acre solar farms. Okay. They're saying they need 1,000 guys. So the mainstay of that job should be IBW. Okay. So they should need like 800 electricians to build this solar farm out. Okay. Well, I'm telling you, my opinion, I think it's BS. It ain't going to happen because if it was, they should be panicking. They should be advertising every day on the TV. I need electricians in the apprenticeship. That's a lot of damn guys that you're going to need on top of your current infrastructure that you're maintaining as an IBW guy. That's just my opinion. I don't see no Boilermaker jobs in these solar farms. And the next thing that I got to add to that is, if you look at how these subsidies work in the prevailing wage language, Act 72, demarcation, the whole 9 yards, they're not going to pay prevailing wage at them jobs. They might do it in the beginning to clean that site and get RCAP money or grant money to come in and clear that site. But when these guys come in and say, I'm a private investor and I'm going to build this solar, they ain't paying prevailing wage. So what are they going to pay? They're going to pay low, not family-sustaining wages, and they'll bring them in for whatever they need to bring them in from to do it because they can't afford to pay it out. That's what I'm saying. That's my opinion only, though.
So go ahead, John.
No, I mean, I was going to say it kind of reminds me of the early days of the industry in Pennsylvania where we didn't have the qualified workforce to come in and develop our resources. We had a lot of people from out of state, and then over the years, we got rid of the license plate problem. We have local people doing these jobs now, and it's a whole different ball game. And I think that echoes to what Sean said. 14,500 people. Yeah, you should be in a panic because that's a lot of jobs, and we don't know where they're coming from at this point.
When are we going to find the details? When are we getting the details? And find out where the rubber meets the road. Any idea there?
That's a great question. That's $1 million question, let me tell you. And I'd like to get one more example in there, JDoc. So in my building trades, I'm also the president of South Central Building Trades. I have a renewable manure digester being built right in the shadow of the Homer City coal plant that is apparently closed now, okay? So they came in and they prepped that site and they took money, they took subsidy, and it went good union. Operators, R&L Development, and Howard Concrete came in and pumped, I don't know how many tons or cubic yards of cement into the mines that were underneath it to shore up the ground, okay? That went great. That went union. And then you got Air Liquide and Gruppo, an Italian company and a French company comes in and says, I'm going to now build this waste digester from Commodore. I'm not taking no private or no subsidies. I'm going to build this all private, okay? They could pay $7 an hour if they wanted to. They're not held to no prevailing wage standards. And then at the end of the job, when they want to tie the pipeline in, there's another grant money for like $2 million to tie the pipeline in. It never triggered prevailing wage. I'm having a hard time getting it. And then I find out, well, that's how the loophole is, and that's where it's going. I had labor and industry in my building trades. I'm like, wow, that ain't right, okay? And that's what my argument is on the energy. I never have to argue about what you're going to pay at an energy job, building a gas plant or building anything energy. They're all good, high-paying jobs. We control it here in Pennsylvania. I shouldn't say control, but the skilled labor force, they need us to build it, and they're willing to pay. They're not willing to pay on that. And there you are, to digest manure for a small little bit of methane that you're going to produce and tie in. I just think it's a joke. And they're going to build 10 more of them. And I'll be really curious if labor gets a part of it.
John, talk about the next steps here. Okay, we're waiting to find out the details. Okay, we have gotten some positive response from obviously whenever the Sierra, whenever I'm reading comments, from the Sierra Club, it certainly makes me nervous. Okay, thanking the governor for proposing what would be the largest increase of renewable energy in our Commonwealth's history. The package isn't perfect and still, includes some dirtier energy sources, but we can't wait for perfection. Okay, I always get a little nervous when you get large groups of environmental groups jumping up and down for the positive. Okay, but this is going to be a process, and so we knew something was going to be done, guys. You know what I mean? We knew there was going to be an initial proposal, but these things take time. And Sean, you're so passionate about it, and representing your members, and we're certainly we look at the facts, and we see our jobs going to West Virginia. By the way, Sean, your analogy of the car, where would you buy the car is spot on. But John, what are the next steps here? We got 3 minutes. After we actually get the details of the proposal.
Yeah, I think we all have to take a hard look at it. Our technical folks will take a look. I know Sean's people will take a look at it and hopefully engage in a dialogue with the General Assembly and the governor, talk through it. I don't know if we'll get to a good place. It's just one of those things where in Pennsylvania, frankly, when it comes to environment, we don't need it. We have lowered our emissions. I mean, we're winning that fight. So this is something that, I honestly am kind of baffled as to why we're even having this conversation.
So in a sense, the governor's trying to appease the environmentalists and create this maybe, almost, not cloning of Reggie, but a policy that, obviously maybe mirrors it in one way or the other. And, it's a detriment to, the jobs and the projects that we're losing to West Virginia and other states. Is that along the line?
I can't speak for the governor, but yeah, I will say that it sends a bad signal to people who want to expend literally billions of dollars on projects, but with an uncertainty out there as to whether they'll be viable 2, 3, 4 years from now.
Sean?
Well, here's where I stand in the Boilermaker right now. I've been an advocate for how long now, JDoc? 5 years. I'm not quitting, but you know what? My membership has depleted, okay? At this point, I'm not so much saying I need to move on, but I got to go to friendlier soils and push my agenda and work with my brother in 667 in West Virginia and man that work down there and build that energy infrastructure out, because I'm not building here, and I've spoken to, I'm blue in the face. I don't want to be the wet blanket on Governor Shapiro. I hope everything works out. And like I've said in the past, if it works and it's great, I'll be the first one to stand on the steps of Harrisburg and congratulate him and the environmentalists that I was wrong. But I don't believe that I'm wrong, and I think that we're getting fleeced right now and losing our jobs in a state that we are strong with labor. In Western Pennsylvania, we are absolutely strong with organized labor, and I don't see them particular strengths in red states like Ohio and West Virginia. Okay, they're red states with red governor, but they need skilled labor, and we possess it in Pennsylvania, and they're willing to take us there and pay us there. Okay, and that's where we're at. So I want to build out in PA, and I'm all ears. I'm ready to work with anybody, but I'm not going to keep banging my head off the cement floor here. And I guess I'm over it. You know what I mean? Okay, I guess it's like prove it to me, do it. But I think you're on a losing strategy. But again, I'm a blue collar guy. I'm not the governor. The governor's a smart guy, and they are in that position to be governor to make the hard decisions. And this apparently is a decision he'd like to make with the NRDC, Sierra Club, Penn Environment, Penn Future, and they're going to lead us in a direction that makes Pennsylvania stronger. I totally disagree with it. I think it's going to weaken us.
John Bain, closing words?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Sean said and to what I've said before, think this is a policy that I don't see how it will work. As Sean said, the governor's a smart guy. Maybe he has a different view of things, but there's some activists that are involved that I'm very nervous about because they just want to block things. You look at the power plants that have been canceled, pipelines that have been canceled, LNG facilities that have been canceled. And I think this is just another warning sign to investors they're not going to want to come here. And then, we don't have the jobs here, and Sean's going to other states to do work. And it doesn't have to be that way. We're on a gold mine.
If I could just finish with this, JDoc. First, it was the end of coal. Okay, you don't want coal. We got to put natural gas in. Okay, we're ready to build natural gas. Well, really, natural gas is no good either. We got to go into carbon capture and hydrogen. Oh, okay, I'm ready to build out carbon capture and hydrogen. Now the environmentalists say, now we really don't want hydrogen and carbon capture because all that's doing is prolonging the fossil fuel industry. Well, I'm tired of bending. What do you want? So there you go. Build it out. If that's what it takes, then I'm like, show me. I guess I got to see it.
Anything that our listeners, can lay their hat on in regards to voicing their opinions. Any suggestions? Or right now, are we too early in the game?
Yeah, I would just say pay attention. It's early in the game, but when the time comes to reach out to legislators and activate, that is just super critical. Legislators need to hear from their individuals back at home, the people that the voters.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, always awesome and a pleasure to have you on the program. Certainly, this is an eye opener, and like John just said, keep for our listeners, keep your eye out and your ear listening to what's going on. Sean Steffi, your passion and what your insights are always just appreciated, and you guys being a part of our labor and energy initiative and doing what we're doing. It's about working together. Certainly, we want to keep these jobs in Pennsylvania, and there's so much more, by the way, to talk about there. Sean Steffi, business agent, Boilermakers Local 154, and John Bain, Director of Government Affairs, EQT Corporation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, JDoc.
Thank you, JDoc.
Always a pleasure. We'll have more from the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey in just a minute.
Go.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. And as I'm getting older, I would like somebody to fight for me. So I called up Retiree First.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you. I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at Retiree First. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Back here on the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Just some closing thoughts here, JDoc, before we sign off for another edition of the Labor and Energy Show. This show for sure with Sean Steffi and John Bain will be one to download, as there were so many key points made by Sean and John during that conversation. I'm with Sean. I don't want jobs leaving the state of Pennsylvania. And when that's happening, that's taking revenue out of the state. That's taking revenue away from union members in the state. And I thought he delivered some great comments today as part of the dialogue.
Well, look, I mean, our jobs and you can use that as a litmus test. You know, we want great energy policy here. And we want to do things efficiently, and we want to prioritize our emissions. Okay. And we have labor unions and organizations that can obviously make that happen. We don't want to lose our projects to states that are right in neighboring states. And so the passion that Sean Steffi brings to the table, and of course John Bain, and of course there's varying opinions in labor at this point, but we're so early in the game. But the fact of the matter is that we talk about a litmus test. We got to keep these projects here in Pennsylvania. And
labor's about jobs, man. Jobs. And the one thing Sean mentioned that we've been talking about it for 10 years on the labor show. It's really one of my true perspectives about labor. You're just not going to get a better skilled workforce than you are from a union trained, safe workforce that gets the job done. And that's what we are. Not meaning we, but that's what the Boilermakers are. That's what the steam fitters are. That's what the unions are.
No question about it. And by the way, well-trained labor force, great companies, okay, and contractors and all those things that make organized labor run, but also lobbying for the projects, keeping them here, supporting policy that's going to keep the, and we do it. And our governor has committed to working together with labor and energy. So can't wait to see the details here. Like Sean said, if this works, he'll be the first one up there on the state capitol. Hopefully we'll have something to celebrate. But right now it's wait and see. And of course, we want to thank the guys for being on the show.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. See you next time, everybody.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jan that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag, and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third-generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.